for many years now that you could have the best players of that sport on a team. Each individual could be the best in their position, their craft, their skill. But if they don't have that bond, they're not going to win games. As a coach, you need to be like a psychologist, I guess, and you have to understand what motivates each player and what their home life is like, where they're coming from, where they're coming to school every day from. And I like to tell the kids it's their team just as much as it is mine. You have to have a really well rounded coaching staff, especially not just your coaches, but your captains and your leaders on the team as well, because kids don't want to hear their coaches all the time. They want to hear from their teammates, and they want to be motivated by their leaders.
Hello and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with me, Coach Luca. I hope you've been enjoying all the recent content recently because there are so many valuable insights, reflections, and opportunities to take much away from wonderful coaches who appear on the podcast, as well as many other professionals who are able to provide those insights and experiences for yourselves. This week's release is here and it is ready for a new episode. It is that time of week again whereby I can introduce the Coaching Insight series with a wonderful individual and a wonderful coach who has been waiting a substantial amount of time for this episode release, just on the basis of the release list and waiting time that has come around. I know they've been anticipating the release of this one, and I've been looking forward to it, as I have with every release of each new episode, for me to deliver this. I know there is some turnaround between some interviews and releasing of these episodes, but I've been so lucky enough to build up a release list for 2023, which has been so successful so far, that has allowed me to produce and release an episode every week on the podcast. So it is with much ado that I welcome Coach Dominique Ocello. Coach Dominique has been a high school PE teacher who has been a championship winning coach on various occasions. For 3 times Coach of the Year, for a head coach of Memorial Boys Soccer, as well as a head coach of softball. She is a wonderful individual who has much experience from various sports, combining that in terms of how she approaches the game and what she instills in terms of that mentality and high quality coaching which is instilled across the board. For someone who maintains such high standards with a great outlook towards achieving as much as she can as individually, as well as with her team, and bringing that together with the opportunity of achieving success here and now, delivering those life skills and life lessons for the long term. You could really hear the standards that are attained right throughout the podcast episode and right throughout her approach within the game. Not only in the game of soccer, but the game of softball. So it was interesting to have a softball approach and insight, and the first softball coach to appear on the podcast. That is another first for the podcast. And Coach Dominique, I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I have on playback, because you have been waiting such an amount of time, whereby I know it can be difficult to wait, but you have been so wonderful. I remember having this discussion with you. But in this episode, we talked about alignment, creating winning teams, strategy and language, team selection. We then talked about that mentality, how we talked about teaching, how we talked about tracking, how we talked about metrics. We talked about coaching staff qualities and standards, bringing them together, how to create well-rounded teams in both the coaching staff and the players, how you develop leaders and how players want to listen to those leaders, developing empathy, developing understanding. We talked about expectations, goals and objectives. We talked about having a brotherhood and that bond in terms of what she does as a head coach from Memorial Boys Soccer. We talked about how we understand players and what we need to do to understand them, so whereby we can then minimise frustrations within the team and individuals. We talked about the foundations, and we talked about crafting, which is really important when it comes to developing those foundations. Overall, we talked about alignment, belief in ethos, championship winning teams and integration. Talked about minimising frustrations, bending and not breaking, player expectations as well. We talked about coaching team dynamics and personalities. As always, there is so much within this episode, and I hope that you enjoy this as much as I have, because Coach Dominique was so wonderful to have on the podcast. This is such a top episode with so many different insights, experiences, as well as reflections which you can continue to add each week. Add to your journal and take much away. This is another top episode with a top coach who I've been so lucky to have in my corner, backing me and giving the support for the podcast over the many months of waiting, resharing, tweeting, engaging in conversation, and keeping up to date. It's great because by the time you have these conversations and the releases of these episodes, each of the coaches have so much more which they've done within that time frame. It adds to such more reflection when the episode does release. However, this is Coach Dominique Ocello. Don't forget, 3 Coach of the Year opportunities that she has won and has much experience behind her. It was great to speak to Coach Dominique because she is such a wonderful person and interviewee. Please check out her socials, as with every other professional and individual who appears on the podcast, because they share so much amongst their own socials, whereby you can gain many more insights in terms of what they do. You can follow, drop a like, drop a subscribe, leave a comment. It does really help, especially across our socials in terms of Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can also find the podcast on TikTok, Flickr, and other social media outlets, including Podcast Addict, whereby you can listen to the podcast. However, every follow, every like, every retweet, every comment, every subscription does really help the podcast grow. So please share within your communities and please drop that subscribe, that like, and that follow, because it does really help. As you can see on screen, I'm Anthony_Luca96. It's at TRC Podcast_ on Twitter. It is the Reflective Coach Podcast everywhere else. This week's episode is Coach Dominique Ocello. Please enjoy. It's a wonderful episode. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the episode. Coach Luca.
It doesn't matter if we're losing right now. Like, this is our warm up. This is our building our chemistry again with new players, because obviously not every starting kid from last year will get a starting spot again this year. Things will change. The plan is always changing. Things are constantly growing.
So it's nice to see you. How are you doing today? You all right?
Yeah, I'm doing amazing.
Good. I'm glad to hear. How's your week going so far then?
My week has been really busy. I just got back from a softball tournament in Illinois.
Oh, cool. How did that go?
It went fairly well. Fairly well.
Did you have any expectations going into that then, or was it just more of a enjoyable tournament, or how did you approach that?
Well, this tournament in Illinois is really competitive because they choose the top 40 teams, I believe, around the country to compete, and all these D1 schools and colleges are there to recruit the kids, so it's really fun atmosphere. So
Sounds exciting, and definitely a great experience for the players as well as yourself then, which is great.
yeah, it was a really good time. I'm glad that's over, and now we move to another tournament in New Jersey tomorrow. My God.
Oh, cool. So are you traveling later today then, or are you traveling early in the morning? How far is that away from you?
So this tournament, they always make the games really early at 8 a.m. So our warm-ups start at 7, an hour drive, waking up at 5:30 in the morning, you got to love what you do that.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Is there any reason it starts at 8 o'clock then, or?
No reason. They just like to get the tournaments in the morning.
Nice and fresh for the players then, with a warm-up at 7 o'clock, as well as coaches, getting there, and, definitely a long day, but as you say, you've got to love it, and it's the experience that sort of goes with it, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
But as you say, it's a busy time, but it's a great time as well because you get these experiences traveling, tournaments and being within that top competitive 40 teams. Then you get to prepare for camps. You're preparing for, a new season as well. You get the end of the season. A lot going on, but a lot of different mindsets and hats to sort of put on in that reality then.
Yes, exactly. There's a lot going on. There's so many different aspects that you have to like work through. So it's a busy time, but a fun time.
Absolutely. And over that course of say like a year and then a season then, and obviously you're coaching games, you have a training program, you work with the players, you're starting pre-season. You might be at the start of the season, you might be mid-season, end of the season where you're at now, so obviously summer, tournaments, etc. Is there a favourite time of the year or favourite part of the season which you prefer an element of the programs or the element of the life that you live within that period, for example?
Well, preseason is always really exciting because you're getting the team back together after an off season and you're able to just start the grind right away because you've been anticipating it for so long. So preseason is one of my favorite things, and then the first part of the season when everything's starting to flow and like kids are jumping back into it, I like that part.
And that's great. And obviously, pre-season's up and coming now and the start of a new season. How are you
Yep.
feeling about the approach towards that then?
Well, we since the fall season ended and our soccer season ended in the fall, we've just been nonstop working out in the weight room. We've joined two leagues already that we already finished. We're joining another one in a few weeks, and preseason starts July 24th. So we're really looking forward to starting all this because the kids have just been so hungry since the season ended. And as a coach, like I'm trying to build this program even more. So it's been a lot of fun, especially for soccer.
It sounds it as well. And in terms of building that program, where would you like it to get to and how are you building it?
Well, last year was the first time that our soccer team had a winning season in a while. So, and we were in the American division. So now that we're moving up, we're versing a lot harder teams than last year. And the expectations are fairly high because we have majority of our returning lineup coming back, and majority of our team are seniors and juniors. So they should have a much higher IQ. They've been working out constantly. Their bodies are bigger. They're in better shape. So we're definitely looking to win some hardware this season for sure.
And it sounds great of, playing harder teams, that better experience and maybe more technical players to prepare against that tactical shape as well, that framework and everything that goes into it. Supporting the players in terms of how they reflect, how they approach games, how they come away from it. Or, team talks might change. The assistant coach might take something more on the warm-ups, the analysis, the film, everything that goes with it is, a complete different transition from year one to year two, for example.
Exactly. You have to have a really well rounded coaching staff, especially not just your coaches, but your captains and your leaders on the team as well. Because kids don't want to hear their coaches all the time. They want to hear from their teammates and they want to be motivated by their leaders. So when we're doing film and our warm ups, that's basically like our assistant coaches and our leaders should already know the expectations of the head coach, and they are putting that forth. And then it's just really easy when you have a staff that understands like your goals, your objectives, what your expectations are, so we can build off of that and building all the different opinions and skill levels and strategies that everyone has. You're willing to build something really strong.
Absolutely, and I love that. And there's a lot within that expectations, goals, those objectives, well-rounded coaching staff, well-rounded leaders and captains. And whilst looking at that and sort of analysing that within itself, if I said to you, Coach Dominique, what would you say a well-rounded leader and captain is for you? How would that look, and who would that be, for example?
Someone that's really good at communicating, especially when times get tough, and they're willing to be very expressive with their opinions and their emotions and willing to grab that information from their teammates. A really good role model, so someone that the younger kids, especially like in middle school, look up to and they're getting excited to play for that program. They're obviously you're a student athlete, so someone that's really good in the classroom, someone that's going to class on time, holding their teammates accountable with what is expected and looking to use their love of the game and using that to advance them to the next level, which is playing in college. So someone that's hits all those check boxes would be a great leader captain for me.
And that leader captain is great, and hopefully you can, mold someone into that if they're lacking maybe those areas and expertise, or maybe that skill set just needs to be pulled out a little bit more. And obviously that can be done on the pitch and off the pitch with a bit of mentoring, and obviously that confidence and team around them. And whilst you've got well-rounded leaders and captains, what is a well-rounded member of staff for you then for your coaching team?
So coaching staff, very important. I've coached with many different coaches before, older, younger, male, female. And it's just basically if you have that click, if you're instantly fit, like right together, because you don't really have a lot of time to build that trust. I feel like in that instant moment with a few conversations, it should already kind of happen. You should already have the same ideas of what hustle, passion, energy is kind of like. And I'm very high energy, high energy, high energy. And it's nice to have an assistant coach that's kind of like a mellow person that sees things more as more level, because when I'm going, I'm constantly looking and thinking of so many different things. So it's nice to have an assistant coach that could focus on one thing at a time while I focus on a million things at a time. So it helps balance everything out for sure.
And it sounds good that you could have someone like that and someone who's able just to bring things back down and maybe calm it. It's great to have those energy levels, but obviously, games can be high pressured and that intensity and then the players and the reaction and everything else which is moulded in. And sometimes just having a calm coach and looking at them and them just bringing you down and going, right, I don't have to get so, irate about that situation. We just lost the ball. Maybe that's a player development route. I don't need to, have a confrontation with the opposition manager and all that. So it is that nice balance and to have someone like that. And I think I'm the opposite. So I do have that energy, but I know how to be very calm in a game. Whereas when my assistant manager goes up, he completely goes, and I'm like, oh no, I need to switch off my energy levels to bring this back down. And because there was times when I lost myself with that energy and being there, but I knew by the both of us being sort of like live wires and sparks, it wasn't going to suit. So I had to almost change how I was to complement him and there to support him and make that very good coaching team and balance that. But it's very lucky to have someone who's got that full energy, because say you've got young players coming in, you've got two very mellow coaches. How much motivation and energy are they having over a period of a year?
Yeah, exactly. That's really hard, especially to pull energy and passion out of a team that was either losing or they're down by a goal. You have to find ways to motivate someone's mental game, not just their physical game, because I feel like if you don't have that, if you can't teach someone that leadership to at that adversity to come back from down by one goal, down by two, ends up winning that game, or even by winning by one and holding that for 80 minutes, right? Like that's something hard to do mentally.
Absolutely, and having that energy and maintaining that mentally over a period of a year it's also hard as well, because look at the amount of hours that you put in the early mornings, the late nights of traveling, the tournaments, the reflections of players coming in and out, player issues, coach issues, time off yourself, family, personal time, anything that arises, learning, teaching, that accumulation of things, as well as the games and training within that. And it can be hard to maintain that, especially, as a lot goes on intrinsically, extrinsically as well. And has there been a time when you've sort of seen a dip within your energy levels and maybe your motivation? And how did you sort of overcome that then when it comes to that adversity?
I always say too much of something isn't good. And if I notice that my team's energy and morale is down, I'll look to change up the practice completely, where the kids have to remember to have fun and remember why they fell in love with the game in the first place. So it's always nice to like let loose and play a little kickball, a little volleyball, doing a little football, flag football, something that gets their mind off the game for a little bit, focus on teamwork, communication, and like that brotherhood that the guys are forming within their team. And once they realize like, hey, let's go, we're having fun again, that will push them to remember what the common goal is, and it's to win matches and keep moving forward and progressing.
Absolutely, and it's great to have that. And now I love the fact that you say brotherhood as well, because that's very similar to something that I created with a team I had. So we had that sort of brotherhood, but it was more like a wolf pack element. So all together, in it together, don't leave anyone behind. Make sure you're fighting and do it within a pack mentality as such. So it's nice to have that brotherhood element and sort of creates that culture and that environment without going right. This is the culture and this is the environment, and they can take that away with them. So if you take them on like an expedition or a bit of downtime where they might have a bit of bowling or they might have a bit of dinner or etc. It's nice to see that true brotherhood. And a film, one of my all-time favorite films is Grown Ups. And Grown Ups is about that brotherhood and relationships and that. And I just love that film. And, I could watch it over and over. And it's just something that symbolizes what they can maintain from having a young sports group. To when even, they've passed Coach Dominique and, they've got kids of their own, for example, how they can be really enjoying life at that period and look back at, having that brotherhood as a result of what you were able to do at this time here and now.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen for many years now that you could have the best players of that sport on a team. Each individual could be the best in their position, their craft, their skill, but if they don't have that bond, they're not going to win games. Right? Like, so if everyone together is understanding like, hey, we're in this just as one team, like you said, we're never going to leave anyone behind, you're going to end up winning championships. Because if you're not a family and if you don't love each other, it's not going to work. And that's such a great life lesson as well, because out of sports, what's the next level? When you get a job, when you're doing anything in real life, you need a team, like a relationship, family, you need a team. So that's really important.
Absolutely, and that's great that you have that brotherhood, that relationship, that bond, and how that gels together and can form that winning mentality and that shared mentality. So you're creating what is called and what is seen to be a collective culture because you're all in it together for the same reasons. And whilst doing that, we have players that come and go in different personalities, and they have their different wants and aspirations. And sometimes having these players come in and these aspirations can be sort of detrimental to a team at times. So they might not have that buy-in to the brotherhood or might not have that buy-in to the team or the culture or the organisation, and they're always wanting to push themselves a little bit more. They might want to be going, right, I know where my abilities are, I can push myself to this, and you might be a really successful team, but they want to go and get that scholarship at the bigger college or try and get there. And whilst sometimes that's hard to deal with and sort of manage as well as maintain. Whilst we do have players like that, how do you manage them and how do you stop it becoming too detrimental to the team and the culture?
Yes, that's something that's really hard to do,
Mm.
especially if as a coach you're not building those personal relationships. But as a coach, you need to be like a psychologist, I guess, and you have to understand what motivates each player and what their home life is like, where they're coming from, where they're coming to school every day from. And I like to tell the kids it's their team just as much as it is mine. And I give the kids a lot of time to share their thoughts, their opinions, just like the coaches do. Like after coaches speak, I'll let one of the captains and the leaders take the floor. And there's something that I also like. I always do like a team MVP. So our mascot is a tiger. So I have this like nice tiger chain that we pass around, and the kids give it to each other. And when the kids see each other giving them this MVP award, giving a speech as to why they deserve it, the kids look at this like, I want to be the next one to get this MVP from my teammate. I want to work for the person next to me, not just for myself. So once you start to create that culture of it's not just the coach, it's the players, it's the community, it's the school, it's everything, they start to buy into it slowly but surely, like all on their own.
I love that, and I really love that sort of that chain around them, passing it around, giving them to do that speech, and if anything, the original Ted Lasso then.
Yes. Everyone's been telling me to watch that show, and I have not watched that show yet. That's something that I'm planning on doing at the end of August after practice. I get to lay down watch some Ted Lasso. Everyone's been saying that to me.
Absolutely, it was just as soon as you said it, I thought, do you know what? That's the original Ted Lasso. Because it's sort of similar, and that's a very American-based culture in that environment, and it's a coach from America coming into a British team, and being British and speaking to Americans and hearing that environment that is created, the excitement around sports, the showcase events, the tournaments which you have, the camps over summer. It's just such an exciting time, and I think this is a very American thing, whereas we're lacking on that side, and we miss out on players having that enjoyment, or being the eccentric speech maker, or those in the change room. And I think that's something which is going to lead the characters that are starting to come out in US soccer across sports to be really successful. And that's why in Britain we might have rugby, boxing, football as our biggest, and then obviously everything else that falls under. But whilst in America you've got American football, you've got soccer, you've got basketball, you've got boxing, you've got American baseball, and then softball as well. And there's some of the hockey, and they're just some of the focus points in America at the top sports, and that's just incredible. I think it just shows how great that is. And whilst you have that MVP and you share that chain around, is there anything else that you sort of do within your team and that culture which is similar to that?
Yeah, we do a lot of team bonding. Like what young teenage boy doesn't like food, So whenever I find a chance to like order some pizzas, grab some ice cream, like with my team, like that's definitely what I plan on doing. And that like just brings the kids like all together. We get to break bread, we get to eat, we get to joke around. That's really important. Something else that honestly really helps are these little summer leagues that I keep doing like sporadically throughout the year, because not just the starting lineup is there. It's like eighth graders that are interested, freshmen that are interested, players that didn't play before are interested, and they're forming that bond within each other, which is really fun to do because now they're getting everyone else excited. Our school does a really good job of promoting like our athletics with the younger kids. So once the older kids get to motivate and show that love for high school sports to the younger kids, that really helps too. So the MVP is honestly the biggest thing because everyone wants to chain. Social media is huge. So once someone gets it, I'll take a picture, post them on Instagram, tag them. They get to reshare. Everyone, all their friends gets to see it. So social media like Instagram and Twitter are big. Once you start posting, they're like, oh, I want to be posted on the Instagram. So that's really fun too.
Yeah, and that's great. And that, even when you might say like a less technical player and, they might be getting last minutes, they're still having those incredible memories and being part of that. And, they're not missing out on anything because, they're like, look, I'm on that social media. Look how this comes across. Oh, look, I got this chain. And, sometimes they might go in the future, oh, I missed out on these minutes, etc. But they'll be, taking in those memories and those moments in the bigger context when they're older and really looking upon that in terms of that experience. And how big are your squads usually in terms of your soccer teams then?
Sorry,
how big are your teams within your soccer team?
Oh, they're big. Our soccer program is the biggest in our high school. We had about 110 kids at our interest meeting. So it's really big. It's really popular here. There's a huge recreational program which they do an absolute like amazing job with. So it's really fun to see like that this sport will never die in this town, and it'll continue to grow as much as it is now. And so we're really lucky that we're able to have like the numbers that we do, because last year every varsity game I would walk in with 30 of my kids, and people would ask, oh, is this your varsity and JV? I'm like, no, this is my entire varsity squad, 30 kids. And so it's nice, and like I said, we're the Tigers, so we're walking in as a pack together.
I love that, and that's a big squad within itself. 30 players, and typically then over say a course of a season or a year, how many games do you play?
We play about 28 regular season games, and then and the 18 or 28, 28, and then we have county tournament, which is amazing, and then we have a state tournament, which is great. So we have a lot of opportunity to show our skill, but it goes pretty fast.
And it does fly by, and especially a season, and we're at the end of a season already, and bump, the next season is preparing. 28 games is a nice amount of games, as well as an opportunity to prepare for the year ahead where, those players come into it. And, as you say about creating championship winning teams, and you've had that success by being a championship winning coach and bringing along some personal accolades in being coach of the year 3 times as well. That's pretty incredible to hold to yourself and showing what you're doing in terms of, 110 players being interested in that squad and that mentality which you're doing. So obviously an incredible job, and who knows, the biggest program as well in high school. So who knows whether that continues to get bigger and where you go with it. That could be a high school decision, etc. But there could be someone out there watching who could be going, oh, Coach Dominique looks well on the national programs here. Let's get her involved. But when it comes down to that, and looking at that squad and looking over that for 28 games, whilst being competitive, whilst trying to maintain that brotherhood, that happiness, remembering why the players play it within being competitive, how do you sort of manage players and manage game time within, say, 28 games and then those championships?
Yeah, so managing game time and playing time is really important, especially since I have so many players on our team that we could use, especially during practice times. I'll really use the players that I don't put in with a lot of minutes to really train like our starters, to put like them like higher pressure for them to be ready if they do get a chance to have some minutes in the games. But throughout this off season, I really wanted to use the weight room, because I know if we're using those muscles, we're going to have less injury. And I'm also going to implement some yoga this year. So to make sure that we're really like able to build our endurance and be healthy for the end, for the postseason, because that's the end goal, right? Is to make it to states, to make sure that we're healthy, to have their endurance. So I have a notebook that I'm constantly writing things down in, and especially like for my starters, we're utilizing the athletic trainer. We're making sure that they're stretching, they're icing their injuries, they're doing what they have to do, because game time is super important. It's so long and it's so grueling, especially if we're not going to sub as many players. They need to hold that. So it's really important to stay healthy.
Absolutely, and creating that competitive team is really important as well, especially, as you have those personalities and players picking a program for certain reasons. And it is hard because you're at high school age. You have to, look at, you're never going to get those years again. They've picked your high school for a reason. There's a program, there's equal playing time, and, balancing that, even if there isn't, a metric for it by the high school, etc. But you want to give those competitive minutes. You want to make sure you've got the competitive team out. You want to be making sure you're holding your teams accountable, those expectations, those goals, those objectives. And, it is hard when it comes down to that. So when it comes, say, the team selection and looking at your team over a course of a season, have you recognized that you, say, have a core 16 players that you tend to use and then rotate in and out of that? Or do you have a sort of rotational system which you utilize across the year?
So I hold every practice that I have, preseason, anything, very competitive. And I'll always group up the similar players that are fighting for those spots. So in those practices, they're competing against, like, the starter is competing against the second string. And when the second string wants that starting spot, it's very obvious in practice who deserves it, because they're fighting against each other. And like that makes my job so much easier, because it's not just me telling them, it's basically them, they realizing it for themselves. Like, oh man, it's like in wrestling. They have to have a wrestle off on the mat to see who will get that weight class for that day, right? It's the same thing for soccer. I'm utilizing those practices. And then I love to make sure that my main subs know, like, hey, expect to go in the next 25, 30 minutes. Hey, make sure at this minute you're warming up on the side. Like, that's something that obviously my assistant coach and like my leaders on the bench will also do and remind my players. So that's really important as well. And I just keep that basic rotation of the same people in very similar positions on the field. So there's not that loss of connection with someone on their right, their left, front, behind.
So that consistency then, and sort of that pattern recognition, you believe that to be an important aspect in terms of how you pick your teams and how that looks for you then?
Yeah, I think that's really important to create that pattern, that consistency, because that's how I want my season to go, is to stay consistent. So if I'm constantly fluctuating different players in different positions and taking this person out within these certain minutes, it ruins that chemistry. And I have noticed that in certain times where I did play around a little bit with my lineup. So I noticed if I keep like a more construct basis of my rotations and have those expectations and reevaluate and communicate with my players, it works a lot easier.
Interesting, perspective in terms of that, and I agree with a lot of that as well, because you want to maintain again that competitiveness and that pattern recognition for a player who starts and he might be one of your better technical players. They want the player who might be the fittest on the right, or a player who they know that's going to connect, the player that gets on the end of the ball. And it's hard because I work with some players and you've got a group and you've got some lesser technical players, and as much as they're part of the group and they help form that team, as soon as you bring them on, you can see the player who might be in centre mid going, oh no, because they know their pass won't connect, or it won't get there, or the player, won't have that first touch, etc. Then they're getting frustrated on that, and then they're starting to go, I'm not going to go for that pattern down the right-hand side where we know we're successful. I'm going to try and hit the left. And therefore, there might not be that success in the team because, the left-hand sided opposition might be, the right-hand side dealing with our left side on the opposition might be really technical or understanding or reading the games well. So then we're not getting down that side, and then we're, conceding counter-attacks and so on. But for that player to get frustrated, it's difficult then, because then we have to manage that player. We have to manage player coming off, manage player coming on, and then what that success looks like and how we want the team to play in terms of that pattern and recognition by formulating those better technical players within that group, and as you say.
Yeah, I'm definitely... that's why you have to have great communication with your kids, because at the end of the day, they're on the field competing with their players next to them, their teammates next to them. So I always like to make sure that they're comfortable with the person on the left and with the right. And if they want to make adjustments, like a lot of my players play on different club teams, so they might be the right winger for their club team, but we might need them as our left wing, or we might need them as our left mid. Someone that's just a straight striker on their club team, we may need them as a midfielder, right? Like they're just going to have to work within their area of the field, but make sure, like, when a college coach asks you, hey, what position do you play? You're going to say, I play every position. Any position that you would like me to play, I will play. So they have to learn how to be flexible with what position that they're in and communicate when they have those frustrations during the game time, match time. Forget about it. Those frustrations are so hard to deal with as a coach because there's not enough time. So that's why practices are so important, and that communication beforehand, so we can minimize those frustrations during the match.
Absolutely, and minimising those frustrations. I absolutely love that, and I'm going to quickly note that down because it's true, and that sort of relates into something that keeps coming up along the week is control the controllables. So realistically, then that minimising the frustration comes under that as maybe a subcategory, or maybe as a flip element to how that could be framed. And whilst you're controlling those controllables, by minimising the frustrations, you're giving a player sort of an action plan, a strategy, and then how that looks on your team, and therefore how you're going to prepare for it, what subs you're going to make, and then preparing and planning that over a course of a year. You might not have too much detail, so you might not be going into 10 games and going, right, this sub's going to come on then and this and that. And that's how it ended up becoming my system manager. He got so obsessed with equal game time, and he was trying to do the best for the team that we had and the context. He'd done a fantastic job, but then it took away from everything where I would naturally make a change and I would see what I would need to do and bring a player on, and it might be the right time or we needed to do something. And he would look at that as well, but then he'd be looking at, right, how do the minutes come along? And then therefore it became very functional by planning out subs and planning them on a certain minute, and it really took away from that tactical side then, because it made it very dysfunctioned across the team, whereby that player who wants to be with the better technical players, that we might need to keep him on, but then we're taking some off because we're rotating there for the frustrations. We weren't mitigating them as much as we needed to. We were sort of increasing the frustrations that we were having because we were trying to mitigate something else in another way. So, it's sort of like a seesaw. We were going up one way, up the other, and it was just, I was in the middle, just like, can I get off this? Because this very functional process ended up becoming very detrimental in terms of what our team looked like, as well as me as a coach, because, it became very robotic, and I thought, I may as well just plan this out, stand there, give a couple of instructions, and then just go, yeah, these are the outcomes, training next week, and it become, that very robotic and less of me, us, and that personality.
Yes, I understand exactly what you're saying, and at the end of the day, it's like the coaches are playing this chess game against ourselves constantly, and it's like a mind game where you're constantly moving these pieces all around. At the end of the day, we're as coaches are doing the best for our players, and I think if we continue to express that to our players, saying, listen, I see this vision, this is what I see for our team, you need to build that trust within my system and understand why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And if you have a question, you talk to me respectfully after a game. Never show frustrations as coaches to leaders and leaders to leaders, because that's when things fall apart. And obviously everyone makes mistakes, coaches, players, leaders, everybody. So, but if we're on that same page of, listen, we're doing the best we can for this team, and everyone has the common goal is to win, have the best players on the field, you come to that understanding like, hey, we could fix this, we could move forward, control the controllables, and move past that adversity of that line of, oh no, what do we do? Nope, we do know what we're doing. We're going to keep moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree, and I love that as well. And you got a job, and you're held accountable yourself by the administration and those above you, and sports is difficult, as we know. Coaches can be replaced, and there's always this risk factor associated with sports. And you've got this squad of 30 players. On average, they're getting something like 2,700 minutes across a game of the season. So you've got a good core of players who are hitting your high thousands within the 2,000s. And then you say you might have 3, 4, 5 players who might be around maybe the 400-minute mark. Would the administration of the high school, and this is just out of interest of how this works, never being in this context myself in America, would you be held accountable for the players maybe lacking those minutes then?
Great question. I always tell my players, everyone is replaceable, everyone is disposable. So that goes along with coaches, administration, anybody, and everyone needs to perform at their job. And something that I love as a high school coach in America is that my athletic directors have been so great at telling me, like, you are the leader, the manager of your team. You run it how you see fit, what you think is right. And if anyone has questions, like let's say a parent has a question about their child's playing time, normally parents will go to the higher ups before they do the coach. But I like to have those parent meetings with the parent, with the players, and really express, because at the end of the day, the coach and the player are with each other every single day. We know what's going on. And some of the times there's a miscommunication between the player and their parent. So when we all sit down, we go through the stats and we understand what page the coach's head is on, then the parents start to actually understand. But with the school, they never hold the coaches liable on minutes if we're doing what's best for the team, and we have statistics and data that back up our decision. Mm-hmm. So I always, no matter what, I'm recording my practices and keeping notes, written notes. So if that parent does have a question why Joey is playing over Jimmy, I have exact reasons and data why. So it's just easier for me and the parents and everybody. So,
I appreciate that response, and it's just a little insight in terms of I've had a lot of conversations, and I sometimes I lack that depth because I'm not in that context. So everyone that I can sort of chip away a little bit more helps increase, and it's great to sort of understand the sport a bit more, because very different to what we do here in the UK, and very different how you get those players within programs. And I just absolutely love the excitement, and that every conversation I have pulls me closer and closer to America, and exactly wanting to get out there, and can't wait to hopefully get there at some point. But it's I love speaking to yourselves and what you're doing on programs, and these insights are great to have, and especially then looking into team selection, how that might look, how that might be portrayed, that communication, how you delegate, how team selection looks, how that looks over a course of a season, any strategies you might deploy. And it's great insights as well, how that all then comes into play, fits into that brotherhood, that culture, that environment, and creates that well-rounded picture, which is fantastic. But I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. That's so amazing that you have these aspirations to come to America, to coach. That's so fantastic, because you'll love it, especially since you have this energy and this passion that just translates into the kids that you're coaching, and kids love that. At the end of the day, they want someone that believes in them, someone that has the same love and passion for the sport that they do. So it's just great to have like that common bond. It's funny all the time people ask me like, how do you work with high schoolers all the time? I'm like, no, they keep me alive. Like these relationships that I'm building with teenagers when I'm 31 years old is fantastic, and I love it. It'll stick with me forever, and I'll remember all of my athletes forever, and it's very rewarding.
Absolutely, I love that, and they're very lucky to have someone like you with this energy and that passion, and someone who thinks about them and wants to take that away in their life as well. Because sport can end up becoming quite passive because you might be ingrained within the sport for a long period of time. You've coached a lot of teams, it's taken a lot of energy, and it might be that eat, sleep, repeat process because new teams come in, you start again, induction, and then that program, and then repeat, and over 20 periods, it's a 20-year period. That's quite a lot hard to sustain at times. So coaches can lose that energy because it's been chipped away piece by piece at times, and they might end up within those jobs and it becomes passive within that sense. And when it becomes like that, it's great to still be involved in the sport and get paid, but it's hard then on those players who might be within 20 years time of a coach's career, and not the players who are say 3 or 4 years in, because they're not having that same experience. So it's great that they have someone like you, and I can see you maintaining that energy for a very long time because it's innate, and they're very lucky. And you've had this championship winning team. You were very lucky to have that, and they were very lucky to have you. But you've touched upon it a little bit. But what do you think were the entire ingredients of creating that championship winning team?
That's a great question. It takes a lot of love. It takes a lot of patience. Like I say, when I join new teams and new schools, it's building a relationship all over again. Like you need to build this foundation within your team of relationships, respect, communication, trust is really big. So making sure that you have that foundation and continuing to build in such a positive way is really important. And like I said, if the kids know that they have a ride or die coach, and the coach is willing to give their soul basically to their team, they're willing to do anything possible to fight for you. And I have seen that within my last few years of being a part of a championship softball team and being a part of an amazing soccer program that we're going to continue to build and hopefully be that championship program this year. And just seeing those players like ride for me and play for me and my passion, and sharing that with their teammates is really like, I appreciate that. And like the thanks and the appreciation that I've gotten within this last year is phenomenal. So that's really important to a championship team like that. Like you could have all the skill. I always say I'll take a 5-star work ethic over a 5-star a 5-star work ethic over a 2-star like talent. You know what I'm saying? Like I'd rather have work ethic than talent.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no, of course it does. And when it comes down to that work ethic over talent, and that brotherhood, that culture, that environment, those standards, expectations, accountabilities, and when it really come down to it, then do you think it was more about what you've done on and off the field in terms of that character and culture rather than that tactical side then?
Yeah, it is what you do all year round, because I always say coach's job is 365 days, and if you have to dedicate yourself every single day to your craft, you're constantly researching your craft. You're never done learning, right? You're never done building the program. Like if you're done, if you're stagnant, your team's just going to be stagnant. You have to continue to grow and work with the feeder programs, work with the younger kids, coach different teams, coach with different coaches, absorb, be a sponge, learn as much as you possibly can with the veterans that you work with other coaches, with other teams. Like I'd love to just sit down and watch a game after my game, so I can watch other coaches coach what they're saying to their players. And it's really important, like what you're doing, because once your season starts, you need to be 100% ready as a coach. There's no working on your season in season. You should have your plan already, and then make little changes throughout, but you should have your plan.
I love that, and I love that plan and how that looks with that little changes. So rather than plan, sometimes that can be an overload, and then those objectives that might be overarching the season, you're then setting sub objectives, which then can turn away from maybe what the overall objective is, and then it becomes difficult because you might appraise and then you might change it, and then that plan, it just becomes overcomplicated and then overstimulated, and a lot of that comes into factors in terms of that. And whilst that craft, I love what you say about that in terms of continuously moving forward, that learning, you never switch off, you never change, or keep changing so that you're never stagnant. I think that's a really important point to really get into that, and it's a good focus point as well. And as you say, what you can take from maybe two different sports where you're lucky to have that championship winning team in softball, how can you take elements out of that into, say, soccer and how that looks? So that's a really exciting time as well. And you got over that, say, period, and you're into the last quarter, you're close to winning the championship with that team at that time. How does it feel to be within that last quarter, and how did you approach it?
It feels really good because it just shows like how much hard work really pays off. And I love watching kids grow, like something that they weren't so great at first when I first met them. And then now just being like not where we haven't even started yet and seeing where we are is amazing. We lost a summer league game a few weeks ago, and my speech basically at the end of the game was, it doesn't matter if we're losing right now. Like, this is our warm up. This is our building our chemistry again with new players, because obviously not every starting kid from last year will get a starting spot again this year. Things will change. The plan is always changing. Things are constantly growing. So I said we built that cement last year for this amazing house that we want to build. And a house isn't made with just one hammer and one nail. It's made with all these different tools and these different aspects, and everything has a different meaning and a different use. And that's what our team is. Like we've been talking about this whole time, is taking people with different personalities and different backgrounds and different skill levels, different emotional game, right? And putting it all in one. You could see the puzzle piece, right? And like you could see the picture. Now once it's together, that's when it's championship season time.
I love that, and it's great as well. And one of the sayings we might have here in the UK is squeaky bum time. So you're into that last quarter, and you might be, say, first position, but you could see the team behind you, say, only a few points behind in that context and situation, and you've got a couple of games to go, and you could either win it or lose it depending on how, say, the next couple of games go. So it's very exciting to be within that, but you're also panicking in a way internally because you're like, right, we've done all this work and we can throw it away. So the players can still have that amazing experience. They got there, they challenged, they held it, but for them to throw it away could be an experience which they might never have again, whereby that could have been the only championship they've won. So then it is really squeaky bum time, and it is all around for the players because they're nervous, maybe you're nervous, but it's also that excitement, and channeling that into something really positive is great, and shows true management of how you do it. But it's a situation whereby it can be difficult to maintain, but also one that is energetic to try and channel that focus into the team itself.
Yeah, I'm glad last season happened the way it did, because we won 13 games in a row and then we lost the game, and that first loss after that many wins was so challenging for my kids to deal with. But I'm so happy that we lost, so they got a taste of that, because I always say everyone needs a taste of losing, that big defeat, in that big first game. That has to happen so you can have that taste, that hunger where you're dying to get back and to get better than you were before. I think that's like really super important to what like we're doing. And I like to get the kids involved with like showing the stats of all the different teams that are in our different groups, right? Like we have different sections, different groups, a different division, a different county tournament. Some players have no idea like how that works, right? Like normally just the coaches know how that works. We know our standings, we know where we're lying and things like that. Some of the kids don't realize or know. They need to know how that works, because statistically speaking, it's so hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. And we have 2 teams that are in our division, our conference, our county tournament, and our state tournament. So we're not going to be able to beat these teams five times in a row, especially if they're an absolute amazing program. So they kind of need to understand, like, hey, we might need to lose some. We might lose some to get to that end level to really get to what we need to do. So I'm trying to get it in their head now. Like, we're not that undefeated team winning the championship, because that's almost impossible to do. They need to understand, like, this is a day by day, play by play, match by match, pitch by pitch, ball by ball type of season. And if they understand that, we'll get to that. I'm getting excited sitting here talking.
I love that, and that's what it's all about.
Starting right now.
I love that, honestly.
Like, oh my God.
It's great, and it's great. There's, when you've really lost yourself within that, as you were talking, it just shows, that absolute passion, that love, that energy, and why you make such a fantastic coach. And you built that 13-game winning run. You got this, period and time where you face all these teams consistently over, consecutive competitions. But you built this winning run or a successful run that led to a winning streak. How did you build and maintain that momentum then in that 13 games, you reckon?
So this is wild. People ask me that all the time, and I got off of a championship-winning softball season, and then within the next few months, I transitioned to a new school and a sport I never coached before. I walked in the first day of soccer. I looked at my team and I said, listen, I never coached soccer before, but I'm going to learn it and I'm going to be the best at it. But I know how to win games. I know how to build a program, and that's what I'm going to do for you if you're going to work with me. So I love honesty. Kids know when you're lying. If any teenager knows you're lying. So if you're straight up telling them the truth right from that day, and then they see how hard you work for them, like I said, they'll work so much harder for you, because I give all my free time to my teams. Like, that's just like what you have to do. I'm fortunate enough that I'm not married and I don't have children, thank God. So I like to dedicate myself to my teams, and that's really important to do. And I've coached, let me give myself a little credit, I've coached basketball and field hockey. So using those two sports together and thinking of soccer, I was like, okay, I can understand this sport completely. I'm a health and phys ed teacher. I understand sports. I understand analytics. I can do this. And I fell in love with the sport completely. I wish it was a part of my life way prior to a year ago, but I'm glad I started. I'm so happy I'm continuing to do this, and I can't wait to see where soccer brings me, honestly.
And I can't wait to see it either. And I know that you will have that success and what you bring from those experiences, as well as, that innate characteristics that you bring as well. And whilst you have those experiences of those other sports, and you've been there, coached that, done that, what made you transition into soccer then, or get into soccer?
Well, I met this amazing man. His name is John, and he's my new boss. And we just had great conversations about sports and about the soccer program, and his belief that I could do something for it. And I went to this 5v5 street tournament last July, and I saw a few of my kids playing in this tournament. They didn't really know who I was. I didn't know who they were. And I was just kind of there as a spectator just to watch, see what the energy was like. And it was something that you see in the movies, hundreds of people around this cement pitch, and these kids, teenagers, are diving on the cement floor, sliding all over it, sweating, bleeding, getting hyped up with their team. And after seeing that, I fell in love with it. I was like, I want to be the best coach for these kids right here, because their energy is amazing, and I want to work for them. And that just changed my life. And I'm so happy I did that. So happy I saw that. So happy I said yes.
It sounds very exciting, and something which has ended up playing out quite naturally then, without planning it, and having this experience and being able to bring what you bring onto the program as well. And you touched upon there, on a personal level, that you don't have kids, you're not married, and you get to maintain that focus, that dedication, throw yourself into it, make sure it's all or nothing essentially. And there's a lot of decision making that can come into that, and life is hard then when you're trying to balance all of it especially when sport can dictate, evenings, weekends, summers, traveling, and so on, and then catching up with players, coaches, reflections, and everything that comes with sport. And is that in the back of your mind in any way then, whereby if you were to say meet someone and that could take you away from sport, is that something which sort of panics you, or something that concerns you, whereby your journey has led you to where you are, but you don't want to be taken off that path?
Well, I have been in relationships throughout this journey, and I am in a relationship now. And I'm also the oldest of five siblings. Like, I'm very family oriented. And every single person in my life, best friends, family members, relationships, so have it, they all know that sports are my priority. And it's something that I'm so unbelievably passionate. How could you tell someone that you love, hey, stop doing what you're passionate in? Right? If I had someone like that in my life, they wouldn't be in my life, because I would never tell them, hey, stop doing what you're passionate in because I want time with you. Right. So, like, I think people know and understand that about me because I love and talk about it so much. Like you said, give up every hour, weekends, everything for these teams. So it's like, how could I say yes to going out on a friend vacation if I've been dedicating thousands of hours to this one team? Right. I'm going to say no to the vacation and say yes to my team, because that's what you do when you love something.
Of
So
course. And when it comes down to that, then is that sort of difficult then when it pulls on, say, personal strings and everything that comes when it comes to relationships, whereby you know someone has to be all or nothing by accepting who you are, that passion. Is that hard to sort of maintain as well when it comes into that relationship?
it's definitely hard, because when I get home after a 12, 13-hour day, and I have my third part of my day to now focus on, I do a really good job compartmentalizing, like, my professional life and my personal life, because the people that do love me do deserve, like, my love back. So I just kind of let loose, for meditate for a second, understand that, hey, my first and second part of the day is now done. Now it's time to do the third part. I might be tired, but I always say I'll sleep when I'm dead. And I have this tattoo that I got on my leg. It says "Bend, don't break," and that's something super, like, important to me, because any situation, no matter how tired you are, or somebody, something, whatever, don't let anything break you, right? It's just supposed to bend you so slightly so you could snap back 10 times stronger than you were before. So that's something that that's like my life philosophy, basically, is bend, don't break. My players will probably laugh when they hear me say that, because I say it all the time, screaming, bend, don't break. So.
I love that, and I can definitely quote you on that, and take that as a personal quote as well, which is, again, shows who you are both personally and professionally, and something that you take within that life philosophy and how that might shape some coaching, that delivery, that environment, that culture, that energy which you maintain. And, it's hard when it comes down to life, because you have to maintain and say, get to that balance where you're planning out your time and your day to, right, sport, family, and then relationship, and then, or, that could change, however, depending on whatever you wanted to do with that day, or your interests and beliefs, etc. And obviously life planning can come into that as well, saying, I want to get married in this time, and I might want to move this and then get kids and stuff like that. And as coaches, then there's minutes which pass in training, minutes that pass in a game. We're looking at season, we're looking at how many games, the minutes, the data, the metrics, and then we're never really switching off from those data and those metrics, because we're planning out the day like you are. And that's where our brains go into overstimulation and overthinking mode. And some people are like, some people that we might be with can't cope with that. They're like, why can't you just relax? You're like, because it is physically and mentally impossible not to, because we end up getting into those pattern recognitions whereby we're living within that every day, and that doesn't switch off. So for me, whereas I've always been, a student, and then I've gone into teaching myself, then coaching, you're always looking at timing and always looking at data, and you're always planning, you're always delivering, and it's so impossible just to get into normal life and go, yeah, I'm just going to switch her off and be me, and then get back into that tomorrow. I think that's so two different personas. You'd have to be a robot to do that.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly right. And I can't stop laughing, because what you just said is something everyone keeps telling me to relax, relax, relax. Like, I got home from Chicago 2 days ago, and I call my mom, like, Mom, I have to do this, this, and that. And my mom goes, Dominique, relax. Don't do anything for a day. See what happens. So I did take her advice. I did nothing for a day, and I felt like I lost an entire day.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's like our problem. We don't know how to relax, and I don't know how to shut off. It's honestly impossible. But I just love it. Like, how can I don't want to shut off. Some people just don't want to shut off.
I agree, and something which I say is just relax to the people that I work with. But I say that because I know, right, I got this plan, that's going on, that's taking place, and I'm in a momentum where in my head I know that's planned out, so I can say, right, relax, because it's happening this time, we'll approach it this way, there's a strategy and plan behind it. Whereas they're like 100 mile an hour and don't have a plan, they're whizzing here, there, and there. I'm like, right, that's great, but I can't cope with not knowing where this plan's coming from. And even when it comes to, say, the downtime, as you say there, it's nice to maybe have a nice down day and whatever, but sometimes for like 12 o'clock, I'm like, yeah, what have I done with the morning? Nothing really. And I'm like, yeah, I can't get that time back. So how can I utilize as many minutes as I can within my life? Because and people are like, why can't you just go with the flow? I'm like, I can, but then I'm like, I don't want to miss out on all this time, which ends up being accumulated waste.
Yep. And people that normally ask these questions are people that are not coaches.
Yeah.
So coaches understand coaches. And I think once a coach doesn't want to be a coach anymore, then they can start to relax. But once you have that taste of winning and you've won that championship, cool, that was yesterday. Now I want to do it again. Right? So like a coach is constantly thinking of innovative, creative ideas on how to win again, how to do it again, and how to have that next athlete score that winning goal so they have a memory in their head for the rest of their life. Right? Like you're constantly doing it for. I ask myself every day, who and what am I doing this for? I think it changes every day. I think it changes every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And, sometimes that can be hard because we're trying to find ourselves. We're trying to make sure we stay on that path and, make sure we reach that higher purpose, that we're doing everything that we want to achieve. We're trying to set out our own goals, those visions in our personal and professional life. And sometimes when that changes day to day and then we have those connections, those emotions where, a really good time when we might have a good team and, those players in front of us, and we don't want to move on because of those connections. Sometimes it can hold us back in a little way because we're like, oh, that opportunity could have arose or has arose, but I turned it down and therefore it might not come up again. And sometimes, life plays out and it might end up being the right decision, etc. But it's so hard to really then judge and detail purpose, plan, strategy, objective, here and now, who I am, what this is, and where I'm going. So many questions.
Yes, so many questions. And I think that's what life is. It's wild how when you're getting older, you're becoming wiser. Like when you're a kid, parents always say, "Oh, you'll understand when you get older." Now I understand why people say that. And it's just this constant day-to-day routine that you're going to create with yourself. But again, can't be robotic and you can't be so imaginative. You have to find that like happy medium, that happy balance that will keep you sane at the end of the day. Because if you're not content and if you're not happy with what you're doing, just don't do it, right? Find something that you love to do. And as long as you love something, who cares how many hours you put into it?
I love that. That's such, again, another great quote to really take away about that love and putting something into it that time. And maybe just even something so simple as to finding that purpose. And whilst you touched upon it, maybe when is the time to stop coaching or, moving out of coaching. Has that ever crossed your mind so far and maybe, again, interlinking with that purpose and where you're at now?
So as a coach, I think anyone could agree with this. You're coaching every day with not a lot of thank yous, not a lot of I appreciate yous. So in your younger years of coaching, you're thinking to yourself, oh, I don't want to do this, right? Like I'm not being appreciated. But as time goes on, that's not something that I think about anymore because there's so many little wins and so many little rewards that I feel that I love, that I'll treasure. It's okay if someone else doesn't see it that way. Like I'm having these internal successes within myself that is continuing to make me grow. And I actually just went back to school. I'm getting my my MBA with a focus in sports management, and I always want to be a coach. And my biggest dream is to coach in college. I don't care what sport, what college. I want to coach college one day. I want to be a college coach. That's like my biggest dream. And coaching for me is not anywhere near over. I don't see an end line there for sure.
And that's great. And when you say that and you come across, I hope that coaching doesn't end for you, because we'd lose a massive asset into the coaching world. And whilst you want to get to college and you have those aspirations to get there, is it something as simple as just applying for a job and getting into there, or is it quite a rigorous, tough process to get into a college coach?
Well, it's very difficult because I've obviously dedicated 7 years of my life being a teacher. And how can someone give that up after years of training and wanting to be a teacher? So if I wanted to be a college coach, I can't be a teacher because the hours are the same, right? Like you're practicing at 8 a.m. I'm in class at 8 a.m. You're doing weightlifting. You're doing practice at 12:30. I have lunch at 12:30, right? Games start at 3. Oh, school gets out at 3. So it's like, what do you do, right? So I'm kind of letting, even though I'm a planner, I'm letting life kind of take me with the course that I should be going on and see what happens, right?
Absolutely.
that cute quote that everyone always says, what's meant to be will be. So we'll see what happens there.
And hopefully it works out for all the right reasons and where you want it to go as well. And if, say, you went into that college position and, you stayed there for 5 years, you were very settled, you might not want to move out of a job and, life is good for you at that point, it's worked out. Would that stop you from being a teacher, or would you have to retrain and retake a qualification to go back into teaching?
Well, I don't know. It would depend on you can't be a high school teacher anymore. Right? Like if I'm a college coach, so what type of teaching would I be able to do? Or what would I use my MBA with sports management for? Will I be a project manager of an organization that has an objective and mission for health or something physical, right? Like a coach isn't just a coach, it's a teacher. You're a teacher first. So I feel like no matter what, I'll be using that education of mine for the youth. So we'll see. These are all the questions I ask myself every single day.
And again, finding that purpose where you're going and, trying to find yourself every day of going, is this the maximum time that I'm allocating, and is it being used, and everything that comes into play. And I know every time I hit the shower, the same scenarios and questions repeat itself, and sometimes it's good because it realigns me, and sometimes it's not so good because then I'm going, right, I just had a great conversation with someone on the podcast, I love this thought of America, boom, I must get out tomorrow. And that's good as well because it's pulling me towards something new and towards new adventures and experiences. So it's an exciting time, but then it can also, again, stimulate that overthinking process, and it's tough. But it sounds exciting where you're going and what you want to do as well. And, hopefully you continue to coach for a long time and you get the enjoyment that you want out of it, especially when it's difficult. We don't get these thank yous, and sometimes we reflect of what is the purpose of living, what is the point of life if we don't have relationships, if we're not liked, if we're not getting thank yous, then why are we really doing it? Then we have to go, right, is it for the family? Is it because, at the end of the day, when I'm on my deathbed, am I going, do you know what, I was actually happy regardless of how many people liked me? Is that what it's all about? And sometimes finding those answers can be hard to really define. And whilst you might say get to a point then when you want to finish coaching, you're happy with what you've done, and someone says to you, right, Coach Dominique, I just need to sum up what success was in your career. What would that success, and how would you want that success to look like at that point?
I think what I would want it to look like is for me to, when I'm older, 10, 20, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, when I reflect back on my life, did I help change someone or something in a positive way? Did I help something or someone grow into something great? Did I save a life? Did I help motivate someone to do something they never thought that they wanted to do? And do I have that personal satisfaction of saying I achieved all those little and long-term goals of my own to now be able to relax and shut off my mind? Did I get to that point? I think if I could answer all those questions without going crazy, I think that is what success is for me, is to have that internal happiness of, was I useful and did I change someone or something's life?
I love that, and I think that's great again in terms of life and being that and who you want to be and how that success looks like. And you have this goal of being a college coach and what that success looks like, regardless of any job, and that outcome of being able to reflect and being able to say that and have that impact. So say you achieve this goal of becoming a college coach and you're where you're at, does your goal then change again to get somewhere, say, even higher, or is it like, yeah, this is the point?
Yeah, my goals and dreams will change again for me to become even bigger and better and greater than I was before. Because if you don't have a dream in that moment, like my dream for today is to finish this amazing podcast, do some laundry, and enjoy dinner with my sister. I'm working towards that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm not living towards something to make myself better, why am I living? That's my life philosophy, right? I watched the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary, and it was one of the best things I've watched. And what made him so successful is he was never satisfied. That's something like how I feel. I never feel satisfied. Like, you might have one championship ring, cool, I want another one, right? Like, I had a very successful season last fall, great, I want another one. I'm gonna be a college coach one day, hopefully, right? Amazing. Now what? What's next?
I love that, and that documentary is on my to watch list. But that message and point that you make about not being satisfied and continuously pushing yourself to get there, that's something which is in my mindset, and that's why I'm always future planning, because I'm like, I'd like to get to this point. When I get to this point, what would I want to do after that? So therefore, I've always got sort of a plan A, B, and C in terms of how I continue on that sort of rise, because as I achieve that, I want to get there and so on. And it's exciting, but it's also stimulating as well as energizing, and it's difficult then because you have to maintain that energy, that focus. And again, you might be with someone, or you might have close friends, or your family are going, but you've achieved this, and why are you not happy? And you're like, yeah, but that's not enough. And I completely understand and resonate with that, because sometimes you might look at our positions, and sometimes you might make a decision. It's like, do you know what, I wish I stayed with that and whatever. But whilst you're achieving and pushing, I think that's what really makes a successful person and that real leader, because they're always wanting to push for more and achieve those higher aspirations. And that's what cuts us out from everyone else, whereby, yeah, I'm not happy with that, I want more, I want to achieve this. And some people don't like that, and some people are like, yeah, but we're part of a different cut, we're a different cloth. If we want to keep pushing, that's not enough for me. And I'm completely the same in that all the time. And some people around me are really good at that. And I know my best friend is very happy in life, and he's like, yeah, take every day, happy with life. He's pretty much a hippie style. Yeah, man, everything's chill. And I'm like, well, sometimes I just can't be around you, because I'm like, you're there, and I'm like, I want to keep going, I want to push. And sometimes we don't synergize in terms of that, but it's nice because, as you say, you got that balanced person whereby he just relaxes me sometimes. Go, yeah, enjoy now today, and we can look at and go again tomorrow. But being that different cut of the cloth is just so hard for people to comprehend. But for us, once we internally know who we are, and maybe regardless of purpose, and say, deep down, purposes, college coach, outcome, players, etc., the defining purpose of us and our personality is success of getting to that point of what we think it is, whether that's, being at the college level and having a big house and money and cars and whatever, or whether it's everything else which comes into however that success in personal looks like. But to be that different cut, I think is very unique and very special.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's hard to teach, like, you wish. I always say your coach should never have more energy than your players do, and you can't teach to be built different. Like, you have to just have that internal fire within you. And I think that's something that I've always had, but my parents really made sure that we were independent individuals that fought for everything that we have, and to always achieve new goals. It's always okay, my parents always ask me, okay, now what's your next plan? What's the next plan? What's the next plan? So they definitely raised me that way. But I was definitely born like that, because I never stop. I have the most energy out of all my siblings, and I'm the oldest. So let's get to work, everybody.
Absolutely, and I love that, and I think again that just shows how amazing you are as a person as well as a coach, and that's great in terms of having that and who you are. So if I said, what are your three beliefs that you would take with you regardless of wherever you are in life, team, etc., what are your three top values to you then?
Top values are family. Like, you need to have a family, even if it's blood or water, right? You need to have respect from your circle around you, like your coworkers, your assistant coaches, your players. Like, respect is really important. And then I this I think I'm gonna choose the word authentic.
Mm.
I think you just need to be who you are genuinely through and through, of like your own beliefs, and know what your morals and values are and stick by them, because you need to make sure that you know who you are to inspire somebody else. Woo! Wow.
I love that.
Great.
I love that though, and whilst being that leader, that someone who's innate to get there and have those energy levels, and knowing that you want to aspire and push, sometimes it makes us naturally controlling because we have our own destinies, and if we were to delegate or let it just play out, then realistically we're 65 and going, oh, I wish I'd done that or I should have done that, and then we're not really at those levels that we should have pushed to or wanted to, etc. And sometimes it's hard then, even in coaching or any work or life, because then we're not delegating, we're not trusting responsibility as much as we could, and then we do, and then we're like, oh, I want to take control of that, and it's just hard because of who we are naturally within that collection of that personality and where it's going. And is that something that you struggle with, to delegate that control and trust? Well, you might have trust, but how to delegate it? Do you find that difficult?
Yes. I think that was one of my biggest challenges within the last like 3 years. I would like to say three, because when you first start coaching, like I have this idea. I want it my way. This is the way that I want to coach a team. But it really does not work like that. You learn that the hard way really quickly, that you just fail basically, because that's just not the way that something is ran. So within these last few years, like, I really learned how to step back and let others do the job that they are there to do, because you only see like what your eyes are looking at. Someone else is looking at it in a different perspective, in a different lens, and it's so important for humans to see that we all see like that, and to communicate like our different opinions, and you become so much stronger, because you want to be humble at the end of the day. Like, that's what I always tell my team. Like, you could be winning and doing all this. You might think like you're the best, but you have to be humble and understand like there's other people there too, and we have to respect each other. And I think I really have done a good job of learning how to like let go, let others do what they need to do, because at the end of the day, I need to build trust. And yes, there might be some things I don't agree with or don't like, but it's okay. There's no harm, there's no foul. Like, it's okay to let someone be who they are, and we're all learning at the end of the day. So.
Absolutely, and I love that. And do you think it's then important to maintain a coaching team over a period of time which really understands you, and might have an assistant coach who is happy to be the assistant coach, and maybe not have the aspirations to be a head coach themselves, but they know, right, I love coaching with Coach Dominique because I know what I'm going to get from her, and I might be a head coach in a way, even though I'm not the head coach.
Yes, I have worked with assistant coaches that only have ever been an assistant coach, which is amazing. I have worked with an assistant coach who is a head coach of other sports, and I am an assistant myself as a head coach. So I've seen it and have been a part of so many different levels of it, and it really just depends on the personality of the other people that you're working with, because I love being an assistant coach of the head coach that I work for. Like, he is established. He knows what he's doing. Like, I learned so much from him. It's amazing. I love being his assistant coach. I don't think the roles would ever reverse, like, ever. I wouldn't want them to. And then I've had assistant coaches that have been with me for 4 years that just knew exactly what I was thinking with just the expression on my face. Like, that's amazing. I've also only worked with I've worked with coaches I don't get along with, and that's sad. Like, you can't come to that common ground where you could work together, but that's okay. Not everyone can work with each other. It's so easy to be like, okay, no problem. Let's step away. Let's do what we ever have to do to obviously what's good for the kids. At the end of the day, it's for the kids, and that's something that I love to portray. It's not about me and my ego and my pride and my beliefs. It's for the kids at the end of the day. So
Of course, and that's great that you have that balance and you're able to maintain those experiences and be in those positions to continue learning as well as having a team that understands you. And when it comes down to us and coming back to realistically just ourselves, how do we understand and how do you understand yourself better for who you truly are?
yeah, so we're all human, right? Like, I feel like I have, like when we're kids, we're watching that cartoon of the devil and the angel, like on our shoulders. I feel everyone has that. You're in a constant battle of yourself. You know what the right thing to do is. You know what you want to do, but you have to understand, like, this is who you are at the end of the day, who you are. Like, it's a perspective, right? You're perceived in a way that you're showing off. Like, I want people to understand that I take this job very seriously. I care about my image as a leader, as a coach, as a teacher, and I'm always going to do the right thing at the end of the day. And if I have to go home and scream into my pillow and vent to my father about what I really wanted to say to, that's fine, because everyone does that. But it takes a really strong human being to understand, like, how to think in a very, like, monk mindset. I read this amazing book, but a monk mindset where you have to, like, let go and let things be and just be positive and learn and educate and understand that everyone has their own opinions, their own way of life, and that's okay. And if everyone was accepting of that, everyone would get along so much easier.
Absolutely. If only the world ended up being like that,
Yeah, I wish. That would be amazing. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Hopefully, you never know what happens, and the world is exciting but also scary at the same time as well.
Yeah, exactly. Sports are a great outlet for that. So it's always been like that for me, obviously.
Absolutely, and it's great that you've had these experiences, and we talk about who you are and finding that as well as how that may come across in the team and being that leader, that innate ability, that innate self belief, and that energy, those aspirations being cut from a different cloth. Though that how you work with the players, how you support them, how you would like your team to look, how to create championship winning teams, the ingredients that comes into it, that mindset, and the expectations in players, those goals, those objectives, your long term aspirations, the alignment, the philosophy, mentality, environment, culture. Just touch upon some of the things that we spoke tonight, and this tonight / this afternoon, but just within this episode, so much is covered from what Coach Dominique does, even without us going into real detail of going, what is the strategy? How can we unpack that? How can we look at this even further? Without actually going into what you do fully and expanding into that. But it's just taken away in terms of what a conversation is and just who you truly are, but how fantastic this has been to sort of create a picture and a journey around where you've come from, what you're doing, to how this looks in a team, surrounded by your personality with what's in the middle and where you're going. I think creates a fantastic listening for any aspiring coach or veteran coach out there who might be asking their purpose, might be asking their journey, how to work with teams, and sometimes when they might struggle with personality of others, or how other people struggle with their personality. So I think it's been a fantastic insight, and certainly wonderful to be listening to you and taking your time out your day.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation with you because it's so important to reflect and talk about the things that we go through, because if we're constantly talking to ourselves and in our mind, right, with all of our ideas, we're gonna go crazy. So it's been such an amazing opportunity for you to have me on your show, and I hope that I could be on it again and we could deep dive into other conversations, because this has been really fun and a great growing experience to, like, talk out loud about the things that you believe in. It's great.
No, it's been great, and I'm glad that you've had a great time. And I'd love to have you on again because you'd be amazing. And I've really enjoyed the time that we've had and spending it together and making sure this happens. But before you go, I'm going to throw some quick fire questions at you, if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, so you've given your values and you've given some insights to you, but if you had to have someone describe you in 3 words, what 3 words would they be?
Energetic. I am pretty funny. And very passionate.
Love them, completely agree as well. If you could move to any country to coach, where would it be?
Country. Oh my God, my players will kill me if I say the wrong country. I will go to Argentina. How about that?
Ooh, a first for that. Why Argentina?
Jump in there with the best of the best and be thrown in to people challenging me, being like, why are you here? Well, I'll say, I'm going to show you why I'm here. And I'm going to learn how to speak Spanish fluently just because of that.
Love that. I think that's brilliant. If you weren't coaching and teaching, what job would you be doing?
Oh, I always wanted to be an actress if I really wanted to change it up.
Never know, you might find something in your downtime where you can add something else on.
Yeah, right.
If you could spend a day with any coach or manager, who would it be?
Oh, I would love. This is not soccer. It is softball. Her name is Patty Gasso. She's the head coach of Oklahoma, and she's just been doing it for a very, very, very long time. She's a female, so I wonder like what adversity she had to go through to be who she is today. Like I couldn't even imagine. So just to have a sit down with her to talk about those things with just on a female perspective, like not even just sport, like female coach perspective. Like I would love to talk to her.
I love that, and that's fantastic. And who was or is your role model?
Wow. My dad and my mom, but like my dad, he was in the FDNY. Like he is just one of those just great human beings that just came from like my parents were divorced and sometimes fathers don't do what they're supposed to do, but he stepped up, he did everything he was supposed to do like for us as children and like being that role model in sports. He came with me everywhere for sports is amazing. And then like my mom on the other hand like taught me how to be like a strong, independent human being and being successful. Like they both have touched such big aspects like of my mind and like of my heart. So I want to shout out both my mom and my dad. So thank you.
No problems at all. I love that, and I'm sure they'll really appreciate that as well. If you had the chance of being a full-time professional player, any sport, or a full-time professional coach, which one would you choose?
Wow. I would honestly love to see how Messi's life would be like. Just the fact that he's going to like a McDonald's, there's thousands of people like outside chanting his name. Like I would like to live his life. I would like to live his life. Yep, 100%.
Love that. I think that's a great sort of consideration as well for anyone to take away as well. Even on their journey of who they might turn out to be, who they're how their life could change and where they're going to be in that, and how they're perceived, which a nice reflection in terms of perception as well.
Yeah.
Who is your all-time favorite player?
Okay. Wow, that's really hard. So my soccer team, they've just been absolutely amazing. They have really bared with me with my lack of knowledge of professional soccer players, and they've been giving me jerseys. Like I have a few jerseys in my closet now to to wear throughout the season, but I don't know how I can answer that question. Can I get back to you for
Yeah,
our
of
next
course you
episode?
can. Of course you can. If you could manage any player, who would it be?
I would want to pick the biggest hothead of any sport and want to train them to teach them how to be a strong, mentally athletic teammate. If you could name me a player like that, I would want to be their manager.
I could think of previously Roy Keane, for example, or current, say, hothead, possibly Paul Pogba or a Kylian Mbappe Or
I'll take all of them. I'll manage all of them, and I'll help them with their mental game for sure.
yeah, I love that. I think it'd be great as well to see, and who knows what players you might come across in the future you're coaching, how that reflection might look.
Yeah.
What is your biggest pet peeve?
I do not like when other people are talking when others are talking, especially like when someone's trying to say something meaningful and people are just not paying attention or talking. That's my biggest pet peeve. Like, you have to
100%.
constantly remind your athletes, like, excuse me, like, look at me, eyes here, like, I'm talking. Your captain is talking. I hate that.
Absolutely, 100%. And being a teacher myself and going into end of meetings that I go into every day, we have a wrap up meeting and a discussion, and it's with other teachers, and we're supposed to be deciding on what the actions might be for some of our pupils the next day. But whilst that's taking place, there might be one conversation over there, one conversation there, and that I'm like, we're supposed to be teachers, and this is one of the most frustrating meetings that I ever go into.
Yep, I have seen that many times. Yep.
So frustrating. What is your favorite thing to do in your downtime?
My favorite thing to do, I love reality television. I think it's hilarious. And like it just makes me happy, right? Like that mindless television where you can escape your day and just look at somebody else's crazy life. I love a good reality television show.
I love that. What are your three non-negotiables?
Non-negotiables. You need to love pizza. I've met people that don't like pizza. I think that's just weird. You need to have a sense of like humor and sarcasm, because if you can't understand sarcasm and if you're gonna get your feelings hurt, I feel bad for you and you cannot hang out with me and my family. And you need to just be a family like oriented person. Like, you don't have to come from a big family, but you have to like understand and love the respect of people from a big family. I think that's super important. Definitely non-negotiables there.
I love that, and I think that surrounds the perfect person as well as the perfect coach as well, in Coach Dominique. I love that. So very lucky other half and family members. And one thing to wrap up on, what is one thing you enjoy most about coaching then?
One thing I enjoy the most about it is being able to celebrate those successes with your teams. Like, there's nothing more enjoyable than watching your players jump and laugh and just scream like with their teammates. That's, I think, my favorite thing, because then obviously my players know I'll just start crying because I'm just so happy for that. So it's just that's my favorite thing, is watching my team celebrate with each other, for sure.
I love that, and well, again, wraps up a lovely finish towards what has been a fantastic episode and time well spent. And it's a big thanks from me, Dominique, and I'm so glad that you could come on, and especially as we've been chatting for an hour and a half, and it's been such a wonderful conversation that it hasn't even felt like that, but I truly do appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of the day and time out with at the restaurant and with your family, and hopefully the camps go well and the tournament goes well tomorrow as well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it and can't wait to talk to you again.
Likewise. Well, take care and speak soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.